In video games, characters are made with certain design goals and archetypes in mind. Said archetypes will not only define the way those characters play out, but also how they will look and interact with the world they are presented in. You have tanks, which are known for their durability and crowd control, and a big and bulky presentation that accompanies them, usually wearing armor or some variation of it, and being usually slower than most characters. You have assassins, known for their burst damage and mobility, with visuals that emphasize speed and agility, while being frail and vulnerable to crowd control, and so many more. Amid all these classes, there is one in particular that, while it isn't quite extensive in global representation, you can usually find at least one of them in any given title, and these are the characters designed to be as annoying as possible. In PvP games, usually causing more than one Reddit post a day, that's purely a cry for help at the mere existence of them. Overwatch, while not a stranger to annoying heroes and strategies, like Sombra with her hack and invisibility, or Roadhog with his one-shot, has never had a character whose whole deal is to be a nuisance. Until now. So today, let's discuss about our favorite cat, compare it with other similar characters from other games, and try to find the answer on whether or not a character like this should even be allowed to exist in the first place. To begin with, let's take a deep look at the archetype as a whole and some of the silly little guys that I will be going over today that are part of it. We have Teemo from League of Legends, Jet the Land Shark from Marvel Rivals, and most importantly for today's video, Jetpack Cat from Overwatch. There are other genres where these type of characters are more prevalent, like in fighting games, but I wanted to focus on games that are a bit more similar to WoW, as it's still the main focus of the video. You're gonna learn! At first glance, you can already find some similarities in their presentation and the niche they fulfill in their respective games. They all share two very important traits that will define them and other similar characters. They are silly looking animals / mascots, and they are simply put, annoying as hell, not only in terms of gameplay and mechanics, but in terms of visuals and personality too. It is no surprise then that, for example, this is Jetpack Cat's default voice line. Simply purposely built to cause some form of reaction from the enemy. Let's take a look at our first and probably most iconic member of the archetype, Teemo. Teemo is an annoying little rat. He belongs in the already quite hated ranged top laners category, which, if you don't play League, essentially means that your game plan revolves around poking the enemy down from afar, while the characters that are usually played on that lane are melee bruisers or tanks, which struggle to get close and catch him, so by definition he's already very annoying to deal with. Not only that, but every single one of his abilities has some frustration attached to it. First of all, his passive allows him to go invisible, and no matter the game, invisibility is usually one of the most argued mechanics, with other characters in League with the possibility to turn invisible, holding the highest ban rates in the game, but at the very least he's limited to do so while standing still or in a bush, so it's mostly a gimmick that every player is aware of at this point. His first ability is a ranged point-and-click blind effect, which renders the auto-attacks of enemies completely useless. So you can essentially render entire characters that rely on said auto-attacks useless if timed correctly. The second ability provides him movement speed, so he's harder to catch, and helps him follow the enemy if they are retreating, so being low HP against the Teemo can be a death sentence. His third ability makes all of his auto-attacks deal extra damage over time, and his ultimate allows him to place invisible traps that deal good chunks of damage over time as well as slowing you, and he can place a lot of them as well as lasting for up to 5 minutes. His entire premise is built around slowly harassing the enemy, baiting them into wherever you place your traps, and running away at a moment's notice whenever things aren't in your favor. And even if you manage to get on top of him, you still need to play around his blind, as if you get impatient, he can still easily deny your burst damage and outrate you. Not only that, but basically everything he does has a damage over time effect, crowd control, or both, so it's a slow and painful death by 1,000 paper cuts that makes things even more unbearable. Obviously he has some glaring weaknesses, and he usually isn't that relevant competitively.
Oh, go stealth, Tito, go stealth! Caitlyn. Oh wow, Teemo instantly dead, that is a shock.
God, I love my region. But those weaknesses are usually exploited with teamwork and coordination, or have a more negative macro effect on the team he is currently on, things that your average teamie isn't exactly familiar with and isn't able to exploit, making him one of the most hated characters by newer players. So yeah, if you never played League, I think you can see why he's quite literally called the devil. Funnily enough, we had a character with the same title in Overwatch, but it's been ages since that term had any form of relevance, so... Anyways, looking at Teemo, you can see a presence in the way these characters function and how they are designed. They will slowly and from safety chip you down, crowd controlling you at any moment you put them in danger, and being very slippery, so killing them becomes an unachievable goal you're fighting for all game long. Our second member not only is a lot more recent, but also had to receive a rework only months in due to how toxic and problematic his kit was to fight against, especially in higher levels of play, But first let's talk about the current version, which was initially very poorly received, but has settled down as a much healthier version for the character. Jeff is a support hero in Rivals, but still somehow retains most of the tools that Teemo has in some capacity, despite being from completely different games and roles. While yes, he can heal and boost allies like most supports, his whole deal is his ability to go underwater, underfloor, anyways. He goes down, shrinking his hitbox significantly and slowly healing himself over time, which can be boosted by his bubbles that also provide him movement speed, making him one of the hardest supports to kill in the entire game, and easily being the most slippery, as it allows him to access basically any point of the map with ease, and if that wasn't enough, making him crowd control immune, so he can straight up ignore any ultimate that relies on CC on an ability that, well, has now a meter, has no cooldown and is basically instant cast time as long as you are not in the air. All of this combined with a passive that reduces headshot damage, although that was mostly done to compensate for his head covering like half of his hitbox. On the other hand, his secondary fire, which is also available most of the time and a ranged projectile, has a knockback and knockdown effect, so he can potentially cancel enemy dashes or pull flyers down, which leaves them vulnerable. Then we have the start of his entire kit, which caused a lot of revolt when the game came out, his ultimate, which allows him to potentially eat the entire enemy team, leaving them at the mercy of Jeff, which will usually result in an unavoidable death by spitting you out of the map or throwing himself off a cliff, killing you with him. You can also do this with the spawn room for some reason. While obviously people got a lot better over time at dealing with it, the bigger hitbox the ult had on release and lower mobility that popular heroes had at the time made it basically an instant win button at lower levels of play, which couldn't react on time or understood how to deal with afterwards. Funnily enough, the first iteration of Jeff had even more problematic components to it and had to be made purposely weak in order to discourage players from using him. His underwater state had no meter, so he could stay indefinitely in that state, purely annoying the enemy with how difficult he was to kill, combined with 6 instant healing bubbles to deal with. This combined with his team up with Luna, that provided him good damage output as well as an AoE slow, made him an impossible to kill DPS that spent most of the time on the enemy backline, purely to annoy them, and while I said he was weak, yeah, he was weak as a normal support, but with the previously mentioned playstyle, players found a lot of success as a third support in higher levels. That being said, Jeff still has a lot of weaknesses that make him a lot less desirable as a support, and one that isn't even the focus of negativity currently compared to Gambit or Invisible Woman. He has very low damage, so while he's hard to kill, he can't really kill you in return while you try, and while he's underwater, he can't actually do anything else. So if you spend too much time in it, your team will simply suffer for it, since Rivals is a game that requires supports to heal bot for the majority of the match. At the same time, while his absurd survivability might have been a unique trait some time ago, with the constant buffs to the survivability to other strats, he isn't even the hardest to kill currently, but he can still turn crowd control immune at command, giving him a very interesting niche. And now we can finally talk about the cat. Let's see if Fika has the same traits as our previous examples. Is she very mobile and slippery? Check and check. Just as a starter, she's permanently flying, a thing only she can do as I'm recording, and hopefully ever, while having access to 2 abilities that boost her speed, and the strongest non-tank self-healing ability in the entire game. So like Jeff, she's very complicated to pin down and kill, especially if she's playing passively. Does she have crowd control? No, of course she does. She has an AoE boop on her pair with a considerable range and boop distance, a slow on her most popular major perk, which used to be a minor one, and her ultimate is an AoE knockdown that allows you to pull a single enemy wherever you want for a short time, potentially throwing them off the map similarly to how Jeff does in Rivals. Does she have good range? Kinda. This is the only place where, due to her permaflight, Blizzard was forced to limit her range in some capacity, so she isn't an instant win pick into some heroes, but she can still harass you in the air at 40 meters without much trouble, so we're still going to check it. Is she annoying to go against? Well, you tell me. Unsurprisingly, her release resulted in the highest ban rate on her release patch, despite there being 5 characters added at the same time that had potential of being targeted just for being new. Part of it clearly was due to the cat simply being a bit overpowered on release, which resulted in 3 consecutive nerfs that specifically targeted her more assassin-y aspects, but there are a good amount of players that, despite her being a support, which are rarely the targets of fans, are still banning her to this day. Her gameplay loop, outside just healing people and moving them like a flying taxi, revolves around moving like a mosquito, picking off targets, and being comically hard to kill unless you're against some very specific heroes that force you to play around cover most of the time. Her self-healing, while backloaded, grants her a lot of dueling power that the cat player has usually control over with her crazy mobility, so you're able to get in and out without much trouble as long as you manage your fuel properly. At the same time, her major gimmick was a big cause of controversy on release, with players asking for it to be removed or reworked even before she released for everyone, due to some clips from playtests that really showed the potential the ability had. Her tether mechanic, while usually used just to move people around, get them to high ground, or save some time from spawn, has the potential to break the intended counterplay of multiple abilities, especially ultimates, that create very unfair scenarios and make you ask yourself how did Blizzard even approve this. Luckily, this requires coordination, the average Overwatch player #1 enemy, so you won't see this happening much, as has become a bit more predictable over time, which is why Blizzard is still hesitating with any major adjustments to it, although honestly some of them really feel like complete bullshit to go against. Before release, just using it on a hitscan DPS and just flying around at the skybox was also something that people fear would become a problem, but luckily basically no one does it since you aren't able to use your primary fire and you're far above to use her per on other allies outside the tier 1, so you're basically playing a 4v5 with 1 DPS permanently flying, which due to the high fall off in the game isn't even that worth it in most scenarios. It's still good as a repositioning tool, as well as helping short-range allies get up close or to center spots they normally can't, but the more potentially toxic aspects aren't that prevalent or good. At the same time, her ultimate, which allows to tether an enemy against their will, while initially very despised, has been mostly figured out in ways to counter it, so it isn't as problematic as it was initially thought of. As a whole, her kit also has some very big limitations that force the cat to get up close and personal, that leave her a lot more vulnerable due to her thick hitbox and lack of anti-burst damage tools. Her primary fire will has 40 meters of range, has a very slow travel time and a bit of spread, which makes it far less consistent if you're not up close. So you will be moving around wasting fuel not only to get close to enemies but also to heal your team, which opens up windows of vulnerability where you lack fuel to escape. Her per also has a somewhat limited range, so you want to use it near your team to heal or to boop enemies away from them. Both close out and the now removed territorial perks both encourage you to be in proximity of enemies, as well as her ultimate being a dive bomb with you as, well, the bomb, so you need to be careful or you will be taken out fast. So why do these characters exist? Should they even exist in the first place? Well, the thing about games is that they make you feel a lot of things. Look at Dark Souls and its genre as a whole. Have you played them or seen anyone play them before? Clearly they cause a lot of frustration and negative emotion in players. They feel frustrated and annoyed when they get killed by some weird attack pattern, or things that feel unfair or sudden. But then why are those games so popular? Well, how do you feel when you finally get to beat them? When you have learned every pattern, every possible attack, and you finally earn that victory? You probably feel really good. You feel satisfied, like you're invincible, and you wouldn't get the same feel if the road to get there was easy. Well, a very similar premise lies beneath this archetype. Yeah, sure, they can be pesky little annoyance for a lot of the game, running around and finding ways to make you rage and give up, but when you don't and you finally kill them, you will feel amazing. Sure, you might have died 10 times by getting thrown off the map by Jeff or the cat as a beginner, but what happens when you learn how to dodge it or counter it consistently? Suddenly it's a death button for the enemy, and they have to think how they use it next time, as they know you know how to beat them. Suddenly things are in your favor and you play as if you were in control of a match. Gaming has a lot of these small things that balance on emotions and feelings. Heck, every PvP game will have you lose a lot of times, but it will also make you win a lot of times, and those times feel a lot better after a defeat. You may think you hate these moments, but at the end of the day, this is what keeps you tethered to the game. These are the things that keep you hooked up and make you press play again. At the end of the day, Jetpack Cat provides a very unique experience to play as, with, or against, which can be very valuable to have in a game where characters can sometimes feel too similar, especially supports. Her outputs, while controversial, are pretty unique and have proven over time to be not as problematic as it was initially believed, and she can be especially fun if you're playing with friends and want to just cause some mayhem with a flying bob or diva bomb. Whether or not she will need some adjustments or a minor rework, only time will tell, but I'm honestly glad Blizzard took risk with her design and gameplay and hope to see more characters like her in the future. Just no more flyers please, I beg you. Thanks for watching everyone, as always. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, as it helps me a ton to make more content in the future. Thank you and hope to see you next time.